All right, I know I said this about last week's video, which was on piano, but today's video is all about the drums, which is one of my favorites. You're going to see me playing the drums on this song Sunday Afternoon, and I'll break down kind of the microphones I'm using. All that kind of stuff is headed your way. Just make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can see future videos that come out every Friday at 3 p.m., plus some little snippet videos throughout the week. But enjoy the video today as I dissect the drums I recorded for the song Sunday Afternoon. Here we go. Drums are one of my favorite instruments to play and to record. And I want you to be able to see all the different things that I tried, things that I messed up on, and hear for yourself kind of the different microphones and things that we used on this song. I'm learning a lot doing these videos. There's been a couple of times where I'm playing back the audio that's going to my camera here, and I didn't realize that I put a limiter on Studio One. So what was happening, we usually put a limiter on whenever I want to export something that I want to listen to a demo or something just to see how it sounds in the car. I'll put a limiter just so I can get the volume increase for the songs. But if I don't remember to turn that limiter off, you would hear Lana's vocal especially, or the piano would start to distort. And it kind of sounds a little bit crackly. Hopefully we've avoided that issue, because as you can see here on Studio One, I've removed the limiter, but I'm also turning down my output by -8. So that won't necessarily change what I'm hearing out of these speakers. I'll be able to turn that up so I can hear what you're hearing, but hopefully it's not overloading the camera. Learning a lot, but I'm really enjoying it. I also learned that if I turn the if I set this microphone a little bit higher, it'll raise my neck. This is not very flattering, so out of respect for you, I'm going to raise my microphone up, and hopefully that's a little bit better. Let's get to the drums. Now, I've got some videos again because I set up my iPhone on a tripod and had that rolling. But the first thing I wanted to do is run around and show you the microphones. Okay, so I didn't spend a whole lot of time on this, but I'll try to pause as we go. This microphone is in our kitchen. And as you'll see, basically our kitchen is separated from the living room by this big wall. And I've got this microphone, which is a Warm Audio U87. It's set to omnidirectional. So this microphone I'm using, the SM7, it will record me speaking into it this way, but it has a rejection on the back. So if I spoke, as I move my head around the microphone, you'll start to hear my voice starts to fade away. It gets louder again, and then it gets quieter as I move to the side. This is called cardioid. I've got this U87 in my kitchen set up to omnidirectional. So basically I can put this anywhere in the kitchen and it's listening in a circular pattern around the microphone. What I really like about this U87, and I've seen this on frequency charts, it's got a very flat response on the frequency spectrum. So it's not trying to give you excited treble or high end frequencies that makes you think that what you're listening to sounds really good. Everything I put in front of this U87, I'm using it as well on my acoustic guitar for these intro videos. Usually if I put that in front of anything, it's going to pretty much sound like what it sounds like in the room. It doesn't add anything to it, but it also doesn't take anything away, to my ears at least. So I've got this microphone set up in our kitchen as a room mic, maybe more like a reverb or a chamber mic. It's not going to get the direct sound coming from the drum set. It's basically a way of me recording man-made reverb. I don't know if man-made's the right word, but I'm not using artificial reverb. I'm basically capturing it with this room mic. So you'll see me walk just on the other side of the wall is our living room. Sorry when I pause this, there's some blurry frames. This is my drum set. On the left wall here behind me, I basically just have a couple of hooks near the ceiling, and I can hang up this, it's a moving blanket that's almost 3/4 of an inch thick. It's very heavy, so it helps. It sounds counterintuitive, but it helps to deaden the sound in the room. Our living room is kind of like a long bowling alley. It's not as long as a bowling alley, but it can kind of take on that sound. It's a low ceiling, but it's also a long room, and it's got a bunch of wood everywhere. The walls are wood, floors are wood. I've got this ugly rug that I picked up at Ollie's. I joked with the people as I was purchasing this rug. I asked them if I could get a discount because it was so ugly. It also is very thick, almost like an inch thick. And it's also got different layers of texture on it. So it's going to help break up some of those sound waves. Okay, so just wanted to point that out. Now my drum set is a Pearl Forum series. So all the drummers out there, you'll know that this is not an expensive set at all. Used at Guitar Center, you can find this thing for about $150. And that'll give you at least 3 shells. I'll give you the floor tom, the rack tom, and the kick drum, okay? I've got a bunch of tuning videos that may have already been released. I know for sure the kick drum port cut video is out. You should have been able to see the snare drum tuning video as well. Just know that there will be videos coming up on Tuesdays that have the snare drum tuning, the toms tuning, and how I tuned the kick drum. So make sure you check that out. Only other thing I'll say is the floor tom and the rack tom. These are the Sennheiser I believe it's E904. These are the tom mics by Sennheiser. They're dynamic, but what's good about them is that they're very small profile. They clamp onto the side of the tom, and they're pretty well going to reject, just as I was talking about this SM7, it will reject the cymbal bleed and things like that. There's Lily's crayon markings all over the head. I've also placed a moon gel near the microphone as well, just to take care of any pingy, ringing sounds. Okay, so there's the Sennheiser. Here is the same configuration we have with the SM81s that we used on the piano recording video. So if you watch that, you'll know all about this. This is in the XY pattern. And I've got these 2 microphones as my overheads. And the reason I'm kind of fixing the camera behind the microphones like this is I want you to see that basically when you get behind the microphones and I'm looking down at the drum set, I want the snare drum to be as close to the middle as I can possibly make it. Not just set them in the middle of the drum set, but find the middle of where the snare drum is. Most of the time with a drum set, you would think you've got the floor tom here, snare drum here, kick drum is in the middle. You want to middle the kick drum. Well, if you do that, your snare drum is actually going to be offset, because if you look at it, most of the layouts with drum sets, there's kind of it's not separated like this with the kick and snare. It's usually there's an offset. So you have to match that angle. Okay. iPad here that is running Studio One remote. Doesn't have to be any sort of fancy iPad at all, but what that allows me to do is to check my levels while I'm at the drum set, and I can hit backward, forward, record. And every time you hit record, what's neat is it will record layers instead of just recording over what you did previously. I mentioned this too, that as I'm doing this, I have my headphone extension cord running through my pants, so I can't really get in front of the kick drum. It basically gives me enough distance to get to where I'm sitting at the drums. But you can see here I've got the Beta 52. I believe it's a Beta 52 in the kick drum porthole that I cut. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. I do have some pictures on my iPhone that I will throw up on the screen right now, and you'll be able to see I took some fabric that Lana had and she didn't mind if I use this and cut it up, but I stretched that fabric but suspended, so you unscrew the screws that are holding some of the lugs in, and you punch holes in the fabric and you stretch it out. So instead of having to put stuff against the heads of the drums that might alter the tuning or the sustain, the pieces of fabric are suspended within the drum, so any sort of echoey standing waves are going to get broken up with that fabric. There's another shot. Yeah, I guess it's E904. I can't really read it from there, but that's on the rack tom. As I was playing the drums, you see my microphone cable is drooped off to the left. What was happening, the microphone cable was actually pulling the microphone away from the drum. And as I was playing, I was hearing the rack tom not sounding very good. I thought something was wrong with the drum. Turns out that the cable was just pulling the microphone gradually away. Just as I pull this away from my face, it was pulling away, and I was getting a very thin rack tom sound. So the solution is to relieve the tension. So I moved the cable to the other side, and that took care of that. Here we have an SM57 on the top of the snare. It's pretty common. And as far as microphones go, that's the extent of what I use set up. I'm not using 18 microphones on the drums. Part of that is just the logistics. Like I've got a Sapphire Pro 40 here in the room. It has 8 channels. It's also a Firewire interface. And then I have my Apollo Twin that gives me 2 preamps, and those are connected through an ADAC cable. But I don't have enough microphone cables, and I don't have enough microphones to really go crazy doing a bunch of top and bottom snare, kick in and out. And I think it worked well with this song. You're not really going to miss it too much. Now, back in the day with the Beatles and classic rock, all that kind of stuff, they didn't typically use 18 microphones on the drums, and it worked out. This is a Pearl Maple snare drum. It's 14 inches, I believe, and it is the Sessions Studio series, if that matters to you. I've got a Zildjian A custom hi-hat. Lana got this ride cymbal here. This is the Zildjian K Constantinople. It's a medium thin ride. It doesn't have there's one that you can get where it has an exaggerated bell on top. That is not this one. It is 20 inches according to the label on the top. It's very big. I actually raised the ride cymbal up higher than I would normally have it. So you're going to see my arm doing this number a lot, just because ergonomically it's maybe not in the most comfortable position for me. But what I'm trying to do is get the separation between my ride cymbal and the microphone that's on my floor tom. I don't want, every time I hit the ride cymbal, I don't want the floor tom mic to pick up all of that stuff. Every time I hit the floor tom, I don't want to hear the reverberations of the ride cymbal. So I try to get the cymbals as high up as I can and still be somewhat comfortable. And that's just for recording sake. Maybe not something that would be done in a live situation. And then up here at top is just a trashy, no-name cymbal. I'm not sure what it is, but it has spots all over, and it's old. Looks like a China cymbal. It's like a reverse bell, but it sounds good. Now, a lot of this video, I'm not going to spend too much time with these shots, is me just trying to figure out what I'm going to play on the song. I have a pretty good idea. I tried a few different things. Let's see what we got so far. Now, what you're going to be hearing is the iPhone microphone. I was trying this. I didn't end up keeping this. I did keep the take, but I didn't like it on the song as much as I thought I was going to like it. I thought when I first came in on verse 2, I would do the marching snare drum kind of effect, and then it would build into something. Didn't like it as much as I thought I would. I knew at some point throughout the song I wanted to have this kind of classic rock sound, so I wanted to have a fill that would feature some flurries on the tom. So instead of a fill being ka pum 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 pum, real even hits, I wanted something that was more like ka ba da ba ba bum ba da ba ba bum 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 bum. Something that what I think of when I hear the Beatles or any sort of band like that. Now, I'm going to try to get us to the part in the video where I'm actually playing what you're going to hear on Studio One. So I ended up going with a side stick on the first half of the song, and I like the way that as the song kind of builds up, I move from the side stick to hitting the snare drum. So let's listen to a little bit of that. Messed up. Messed up. Messed up again. Lots of errors. Close. All right, I'm going to get it at some point. Here we go. Alright, so let's get away from the video. But here I want you to take a listen to, as you can see, all the audio tracks here. The blue is Lana's scratch vocal, the piano track we recorded at the church. Here's my room mic, my kick drum mic, my snare drum mic, rack tom, floor tom, and stereo overheads. Now I want you to listen to this. Again, there's no mixing. We'll break into a little bit of things, but here's just the raw audio tracks of what was recorded.
Black smoke against a clear blue sky. I'd never seen my daddy cry. 8 years old when my mama died on a Sunday afternoon. Mama's last words as she held my hand, she said, "Baby girl, God's got a plan, and I'm going home to his promised land, where I'll be clothed in white." And I just stood there as the sands of time ran through, and I swore I'd never loved a God who'd taken my best friend. Daddy made me go to Sunday school, never knew how he could be so cruel, so I did my best to break every rule till the day I moved away. And I just stared at the bottom of empty bottles and wondered why my life had felt the same. Then one summer day he found my hand. He said, "Baby girl, I've got a plan." In that gentle whisper I almost ran, but instead fell to my knees. And I had peace like no one else could give. And I swore I'd always give my life to him. Bright sun against a clear blue sky. Been a while since I'd seen my daddy cry. 18 years when I gave him my life on a Sunday afternoon.
Fun stuff, right? Okay, so I'm going to do something different that we haven't done with any of the other videos yet. Is I kind of want to give you an idea of what the mix might sound like. Because with drums, we're so used to hearing drums that have been replaced. They either record in the studio and use samples of a perfect snare drum or perfect kick drum or something that's already got compression or EQ. We hear these hype sounds all the time, and when you hear the raw tracks from a recording of drums that's just flat like this, it can be kind of underwhelming if you're not sure what you're supposed to be hearing. So let's take the kick drum, for example, and I'm going to solo the kick drum so that's all you're hearing is the kick drum mic. And let's go to this heavy section, this last chorus. Let's take a listen. This gives me gain control, EQ control, compression, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to set these few measures to loop. And let's just mix the kick drum a little bit just to make it sound a little more like a kick drum. On the EQ side of things, there's boosting some low end at 100 hertz, and I'm cutting about 5 decibels where this boxy kind of sound is. Again, I don't want to do a whole lot because I know this is all going to get taken off. And then right here in these mid-range, this mid-range area there's this weird kind of, it's like a click sound, but it's still that boxiness is pretty overwhelming. So let's just take a listen to those two moves and what it did to the kick drum. All right, so here goes the cliche before and after. Here's a before and after. All right, let's listen to the snare drum. The snare drum by itself near the end of the song. Let's add the kick drum to that. Let's add the rack tom and listen to that fill. Here's just the rack tom on that fill. Okay, there's one spot on this fill, and probably should have gone back to re-record it, but listen to this third hit right here on the rack tom. It kind of gets choked. I think I'd hit it with 2 sticks. So one stick was accentuating the head of the drum. The other stick probably muffled it, so it doesn't have the effect that you'd think it would have. Listen to it again. It's kind of just, it gets choked. Not as full as the others. What I'll probably end up doing is segmenting that one hit right here. I'll probably copy one of these hits with the longer tails, paste it over here so it sounds fuller. Let's take a preview of what that would sound like. I think there's sounds a little weird. Let's see where the floor tom added. Okay, I'm hearing some extra stuff. Let's see if we can do that. Still a little weird. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about this one just yet. Some clip gain, make it a little louder. I think that's doable. If I'm not looking at the screen You'll see me kind of look away or close my eyes and listen to that hit. Whenever you're doing the sample replacing, this is a issue is that all the other microphones don't know that you've sample replaced. So they're still going to play what they had played before. And if they overlap at different times, you're going to get issues. It's going to sound like there's multiple rack toms being hit. Maybe I need to shift this whole thing. I think that's doable. I don't think 99% of the people listening to this in context of the rest of the song. Let's unmute. We've just been listening to the drum tracks. Let's unmute the rest of it and listen to that fill. Yeah, that's so if you're soloing the track and you're just listening to the rack tom, you can start to convince yourself that it's super audible, and I think we can get away with that. I like that. So here's the room mic. Probably should have gone over this one first, but I want you to listen to how trashy the room mic sounds. It basically sounds like when you have that neighbor in their garage practicing with their rock band. So it sounds like. It sounds like a garage band going on. But here's what I'm going to do. So now we're doing a little bit of mixing. We're going a little beyond what might normally happen. I'm going to take this fader here, and I'm going to gradually turn up the room mic as you're hearing the drums. So you're going to hear them go from very dry. You add that room mic in and listen to how garagey it starts to sound. Here we go. All right, here comes the room mic. Now let me take the room mic out completely. Okay, this is actually one of the first times I've used a room mic. Usually like I've said, I'm very limited on the amount of microphones that I can use, and so throwing up a microphone and using it as a room hasn't seemed as important as getting something like the snare bottom mic, and it may not be. Might have made a wrong decision, but I really like the sound of it, and for this song it's definitely going to add a lot of energy and excitement. But let me turn it down, because as you can hear, when it was not in there at all, the drum sounded very direct, very clean, and then it starts to get a little gross sounding with the room mic. So I'm just going to dial it back. Yeah, maybe something like that. So it's not in your face, oh, here's a room mic. But it'll be really great when we start mixing all this stuff to here. Now, what I want to do is take this rack tom and let's pan it. So if you're wearing headphones, this will give you a cool little effect. But I'm going to pan this rack tom to the right by 30, the floor tom by 50, and let's hear what that does to the mix. Pretty fun. Now, I believe we haven't listened to the overheads. So here's the overhead mics. Yeah, it's not as wide as I probably would want it to be, but it's certainly doable. And what I'm mostly pleased about is because we went with the XY pattern. As I zoom in here, make sure I didn't mess something up just then. As I zoom into these hits, you can see that the snare drum, obviously the microphone that's on the snare drum is going to hear the snare drum first, so this isn't a problem. Then the rack tom is closest to that snare drum mic, so it hears it second. You can see how far behind it is. Then you've got the floor tom, and of course the kick drum, the overheads, the kick drum, and the room mic. The room mic is the furthest away, it's behind a wall, so as sound travels, it's much more delay getting to the room mic. What I'm going to have to decide is, do I want to start messing with, I don't want to mess with these overheads. Maybe I need to flip some polarity, meaning that if these waves are canceling each other out, by flipping the polarity, as you can see on the snare drum, this first wave is going down and then up, down and then up. And then you have these overheads that are going down, but at the time that they start going down, actually looks pretty good. The rack tom certainly looks like it's 180 degrees out of phase, so flipping the polarity will probably give some positive results. As you can see, when the snare drum's wave is going up, the rack tom is down. So might benefit from doing some gating where I don't want you to hear the rack tom if I'm not hitting the rack tom. I want you to hear the side stick on the snare drum. Now, it probably would have been wise for me to adjust the gain for the snare drum mic when I'm side sticking, and then turn the gain down when I start hitting the snare drum. Because as you can see, the snare drum is significantly quieter in the first part of the song. Second half of the song, it starts getting pretty loud. It's not by much, but take a listen to this side stick from the snare drum. Now I'm going to skip to where that fill was. Okay, not that much different, but I am going to turn this thing up. So I'm trying to turn the snare drum side stick. So it's similar, okay? I noticed as the closer I got to the tip of the snare drum, as I'm side sticking, there's more tone coming out of the snare drum. So take a listen again to that. Let's add the kick drum. The room mic. There's all the drums. I'm going to turn the overheads down a little bit. Okay, so it's giving it a cool little vibe that it can grow somewhere. So let's go back to the intro. Take a listen as I've adjusted the snare drum a little bit and adjusted the kick drum, make it a little fuller sounding. Let's hear what that sounds like.
Mama's last words as she held my hand. She said, baby girl, God's got a plan, and I'm going home.
I'm not doing anything. Last thing I want to say about the drums, are pretty straightforward on this video, but I'm playing the drums as simple as simply as I can. Number one, because as I said in the first video, I don't want this to be like a Green Day song. I don't want your attention to go to the drums really until Lana's done singing. We're going into an instrumental. I'll have a fill, and then I'll have a fill going into our last chorus as well, just to give it some interest. But my kick drum pattern, though it could have been more complicated, that's not what I think the song needed, and we still have a lot left to go. So next week we'll have our bass guitar recording. You'll see that video. Then we need to add, after the bass guitar, we need to add the acoustic guitar. We're going to feature the Ganjo, which is a banjo with 6 strings, just like a guitar. And then we need to add our lead electric guitar for sure. That's going to shine during this instrumental. So during the instrumental here where it's red, that's where the big drum fill comes in, and the electric guitar is going to do some really cool, tasteful solo. And then of course we have to mix all of this together and make it sound like something you would hear on the radio. Okay, all that is coming your way. This is about as simple as it gets with the drums. We are going to get into mixing. You'll see all sorts of plugins and cutting and de-essing, treatment, all that kind of stuff. You'll be able to see that as well. But for now, we've got the drums where we want them to be, and we need to add in the other instruments. And then of course we need to record Lana's lead vocal before we get to mixing. So thank you so much for watching. If you have made it thus far, please hit the subscribe button, and be sure to check in next week for our video on recording bass on the song Sunday Afternoon. We will see you next time. See you. Hey, are my eyes jumping? If yes, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. But either way, check back with us next Friday at 3 p.m. for some more content and videos. Thank you so much for watching. See ya.